Welcome to the Dress Up Mom. Hi, welcome to another edition of Dress Up Mom. Today we're going to be talking about taking care of your footwear and your leather goods. Now, footwear, after all, is sort of the workhorse of your wardrobe, and it's a super easy, fun way to infuse color and style into your wardrobe. Now, I've had a ton of luck getting my footwear and leather goods at resale. It's a really good way to do that and get some quality material over sometimes what you can buy if you're buying brand new, as well as you can get things for a great price. My philosophy is to really err on the side of having fewer shoes, boots, and really go for quality and fit over the quantity, and then really keep your leather goods in tip-top shape. Stay away from man-made or synthetic materials. They just really don't last and don't look good for very long. This applies to your shoes, your boots, your belts, vest, basically anything that's leather. What I like to do is I like to check my leather goods regularly. I do it every 3 months. And I check kind of everything. I look at the soles, the heels, the interior, the exterior, and I gather it all up and I take it to my go-to guy at the Foot Depot in Encinitas. We are here at Foot Depot in Encinitas, California, and we're going to be talking to Jim, the owner. He's going to give us a bunch of great tips for buying resale and taking good care of your shoes. I've brought in a bunch of my things that we're going to go through and have him explain. Jim, as I said, is my go-to guy for fixing any of my leather goods. I've brought some of my things in here that we will go through in a little while, and he'll show us what needs to be done with each of those things. But Jim, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been doing this, how come you're so good at it?
Well, I started this business about 30 years ago, and I've been doing it for that amount of time. And when I see a problem, I want to get to the bottom of it and figure out the best solution for the customer. And it's a challenge. Shoes have changed a lot over the years, and footwear has been manufactured many different ways, and things look traditional. A lot of times are made with materials that are hard for the consumer to discern from what they used to be. If you're buying vintage, I want to try to keep you away from some of the potholes I've seen people get into, because they assume when there's a leather exterior that the interior is also leather, and that's not always the case anymore. So sometimes you can buy a shoe that's leather on the outside and the interior is causing problems. Case in point, this one not a big problem, but this band at the top is man-made material and it's starting to break down. The exterior of the shoe is beautiful, but this is going to get on your leg or your sock. So a simple solution is to get a high-grade masking tape. This one's 3M. And you put it on there and you push very firmly. The tape will stick to what's degrading and it'll peel off. And then you won't have all this black residue all over your socks and your shoes and your leg. And you'll have the fabric backing that the man-made material is backed on. And so it's not ideal, but it's a lot better solution than this stuff all over the place, or you just deciding that you're ditching it because they make a mess all the time.
That's great. I know I've had that happen before too. I really try when I'm buying vintage, or even if I have to buy new, to try to get the highest quality that I can. But sometimes it's tricky.
It's really tricky because the labeling laws allow them to say things are leather, but you have to look at the word after leather. There are some shoes that will say leather quarter lining, and what they're referring to is this lining on the interior of the shoe, and that's the only piece of leather on the whole shoe because it says leather quarter lining. And so you have to be really careful. A lot of times there'll be little pictures and you have to look at the pictures and say, is the exterior leather? Is this leather? Is this leather? You know, what parts are actually leather? Because it's really hard for the consumer to understand this stuff.
So like I said, I've had some pretty good luck buying vintage shoes and purses and belts. What are some things people should be wary of or careful of? We've mentioned a few, but are there other things?
Well, obviously you want it to fit you. Some people will come in and they'll buy with their eyes instead of their feet. And they'll come in. And a lot of times you can stretch a shoe in width, but you can never make a shoe longer.
Right.
And so don't ever buy a shoe too short, whether it be new or vintage, because they can be stretched in width only, not length. So unscrupulous people will tell you they'll stretch them longer. Stretch manufacturers will sell you a stretcher that's supposed to make them longer, but it doesn't.
If it's a little bit, sometimes it's a half size too big, you can sort of put in a
Yeah, you can
bedding or some. So if it's a tiny bit big, I've had that happen as well.
Yeah.
There are things that you can do for
there
that.
are fitting aids that can go into a shoe.
I've done that before on the
They
backs
can
and
go into the
fronts.
front. Typically, the front is better than the back.
Mhm.
If there's space in the back, it's because your foot is allowed forward in the shoe.
Okay.
That creates the space in the back. There also are gel ones. And the gel ones are kind of fun because
Those are cool.
they can be doubled up as long as you offset them so it's not a big drop off. And these can be infinitely repositioned. These will stick in one place, so you got to be sure ahead of time. My friend, the masking tape, if you tape it in place, you can walk around your house a little bit and adjust it front or back. If the heel still slips, push it further forward. It'll be snugger in the front, holding you back in the shoe.
Perfect.
If the front's too tight, pull it back a little bit. It'll free up the front a little bit. You want to find that point that's just between the two.
So what about other things that people should look at when they're buying their shoes?
Well, if they're making an investment in a vintage shoe, you want to build in necessary repairs so that you don't exceed your perceived budget. If
Right.
you buy a shoe for a few bucks and you have to put a whole bunch of money into it, the value you think you got is not the value anymore. This shoe, an example of, has elastic on the back holding the buckle on, which is a good feature, but this elastic has no more stretch and it's degrading, so this elastic have to be replaced. And this shoe also, the interior is made out of man-made material, the exterior is leather, but you can see the man-made material here is starting to degrade and the big toe's pushing it out of the way. That's going to degrade farther and be a pretty big problem.
So
And so look at problems, look at potential wear items, look at the heels and the soles and things. Don't buy a shoe that the sole is cracked. That can be a costly repair or not a repair at all.
right. Okay, good. Those
The
are
heels,
really good tips.
the heels have kind of like a little wear piece on the bottom. I equate it to a tire on a car. Some people think this whole piece is replaceable. With shoes not made in this country any longer, these pieces are kind of scarce and it's hard to find one that's going to fit exactly. So don't buy one of these that has a broken part here, but this tire part, this walking surface can be repaired. And
Okay.
that's a normal wear item.
That's great.
The interior of the sock liner can be replaced. In this case, this can be replaced with a leather one and extended all the way to the toe to cover up that damage. Some places you buy vintage shoes from will allow you to put it on a credit card, take it to somebody like myself, have me evaluate what the cost of the necessary repairs are, and if it exceeds what your budget is, then you take it back and they credit your card.
Oh,
Some of the local places do that a lot.
that's great. I would imagine, especially if you're buying something maybe designer, that's a little bit more expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Also, I know sometimes people want to dye shoes and boots. That's a little bit more difficult to do too.
It's a little more
right?
difficult and it's sometimes more costly, depending on the finish and things. And you have to make sure that the exterior is completely leather because you can dye vinyls, but it's not as good. Fabrics don't dye well. In the old days of dyeing wedding shoes are pretty much gone. And so don't get a fabric shoe and intend to change the color unless you want to go to black. You can take an old wedding shoe. Other items that you can purchase and sometimes get a great deal on is you buy a belt that's too large for you. They can be shortened very effectively. And so I've gotten some really good deals, brand new belts that are in a store. You get an alligator belt for pennies on the dollar because it's a 54 and nobody walks in with a 54 waist. And I think it's marked down and marked down and marked down for about 3 years, and pretty soon you got an alligator belt for the price of a leather belt.
Perfect.
And then you just shorten it and you make a couple keychains out of the other piece.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, yes, I've done that too. That's a lot of fun to do. And then bags. You know, this happens to be my grandmother's old leather vintage bag that I have. I like it and I wear it a lot. So she kept it in great shape, and I'm guessing you can even
And they
make
can
it
be
a little nicer.
they can be conditioned. You want to make sure that the leather isn't too dried or the corners aren't too destroyed. Some bags have piping along the edges, and the leather wore off the piping, exposing the plastic interior. That's almost impossible to fix without dismantling the whole bag, which ruins the whole cost-effective thing in the vintage. Make sure the hardware works, because some of this hardware is non-existent. And if the hardware is bad, sometimes a different piece can be substituted, but sometimes you can't.
Okay.
And then the straps on bags can always be adjusted in length. And so that's an item that can be adjusted.
Great. So I'll leave this and have this conditioned by you. And then before we get to the shoes, this is an old family belt as well. And it's a little bit worn. Not a whole lot we can do about that, right? No. But I do have sections in here where the lining is coming up. So we're going to re-glue that and leave it as well with Jim and show you how it turns out after. So great tips. What we're going to do now is go through some of the things that I got out of my shoe closet As I told you, I'm a big fan of every 3 months going through my closet, and I believe in keeping my things in pristine condition. I don't think you can really look your best if you're walking around with scuffed up, yucky
Well, it's
leather.
funny. A lot of times you see a girl dressed to the nines, and all of a sudden the shoes look like some kind of cartoon cigar that exploded.
Yeah.
It's just such a missing.
I
know?
agree.
It's just-
I always wonder, it's like, how can you walk out of the house like that?
Everything else is perfect. The hair is perfect, the makeup's perfect, the nails are perfect, the clothes are perfect, and they forgot the shoes.
I always look down there too. And so please get less good quality shoes, but keep them in really great shape. So as I said, every 3 months, and I've gone through my closet here and brought in for Jim to take a look and tell me what we need to do to have my footwear look great.
So your own footwear or vintage footwear, when you look at the wear surface on the bottom of a heel, you're going to look to the outer corner of the heel. The outer corner is where we strike as humans. We're going to touch the ground here. Our bones are offset with the calcaneus, the heel bone, to that side of the body, and we lift the foot up, it actually tilts that way so we can land there. So that's going to where most wear is going to occur. And so when you evaluate something for purchase or you evaluate it for maintenance out of your own closet, look at that corner, because you can see it has more wear than other areas. So if you look at this, it doesn't look like it's worn, and all of a sudden this one is worn out. If you touch the base here, the base can be repaired, but sometimes it incurs a little more cost. So it's better to get it when it's near that edge.
Kind of like you said with your brake pads almost. Yeah, before, don't get them when they're on the rotor.
Don't get them when the backing plate's on the rotor. It's going to chew into the rotor.
Exactly. So, okay, so we'll leave those, and you're going to put a new
walking surface on the bottom.
surface on that. And I always get them all nice and polished. Oh, speaking of polish, I did hear that once you get like a brand new pair of shoes, it's a good idea to polish them before you even wear them to keep them nice longer. Is that true?
What polish does is it typically has a wax base. And so wax will repel things that can possibly get on it. It doesn't repel everything, but it can repel water, it can repel dust and things like that. So it is kind of a protective mechanism that can go on there.
Okay,
Another
good.
form of protection for shoes is this shoe has an additional rubber overlay on the sole.
You did this for me.
Which actually keeps it looking nice because the sole is painted black, and when you wear it, you would see the light colored leather through. So if you cross your legs at a dinner party, it would look a little unsightly. This also protects the original sole, so the original sole never wears out.
Right.
And it also, on certain styles of construction, this one, the sole is stitched on. And the stitching here you can feel with your hand is on the surface rather than in a groove. So when you walk on the sidewalk, you're going to walk on the thread.
Yeah.
You can see the thread's been walked off in those areas. This is potentially going to open up here if the bond, that's the glue, fails. And so a lot of times we'll put that thin rubber sole on when the shoe's brand new and protect that thread so it never gets walked on.
So now, though, you can put it on for me to maintain it.
Yeah, that way you never wear out. What's nice is when you have a leather-soled shoe, the leather breaks in beautifully. That's one of the nice things of leather. It's also a really good insulator in the summertime against the heat from pavement and parking lots. If you put the thin rubber on top, you've got the best of both worlds because you have traction and durability, and you have the insulation in the middle to keep your foot nice.
Great, so we'll do that on those. By the way, I've been fortunate enough to buy a couple pair of Louboutins at resale, and you put a nice red one of these on the soles for those. So protect your Louboutins by putting the nice red.
We have the red one in 2 thicknesses. So if it's a walk the red carpet shoe and you don't wear it very often, we have a very thin one. And if it's a shoe you're wearing to the office every day or more around town, we have a slightly thicker one. And that'd be more durable.
Made a huge difference. What else here can we show people?
So polishing can occur on shoes that have a finish that will polish, and that's a little hard to describe. This shoe, the leather is what's called aniline dyed. It's kind of like an Easter egg that's been dipped into the color. The color actually goes into the shell a little ways, and it's not painted on the surface. So when this one gets scuffed, the color and the polish can go in the leather and mimic what's been put in the leather, and this will polish up very nicely. Some shoes have more of a painted finish, and then when you have a scuff, if it's a particularly light colored shoe, unless you paint it again, polish isn't going to do any good, and it's actually sometimes going to make it look worse because the polish has moisture to moisturize the leather. When you have a dry scratch or a dry scuff, it doesn't look as apparent as when you then moisturize it and it soaks it in and becomes darker. So you have to be careful on that one because some shoes, and sometimes you can do some do-it-yourself re-dyeing or touching up. Sometimes you need professional help to do it.
Okay, great. So these are going to look wonderful when we get done with them. And was there something on here we wanted to show?
So this one is one that
I bought these at resale.
So it has a nice leather upper. This part is leather as opposed to the one we showed previously. This one has an interesting lining in that this is a nylon lining that's backed in foam. And you have to be a little careful buying these vintage. This one, when you squeeze it, is resilient. You can still feel that the foam's behind it. The foam on some of these will degrade over time, and you can't see it, but it'll feel a little tacky. And the foam will, the pieces of it have disintegrated, will have fallen down inside in between that leather and the nylon.
Okay.
And made kind of a bulge down below, which sometimes is a fit problem because it's lumpy. But more importantly, the degrading material becomes very, very sticky, and it'll stick to socks, it'll stick to your feet forever because it's just so much of it inside.
It's so gross too then when you come home and it's all... Ugh.
And there's nothing you can do about it. And so that's one you want to avoid buying. If you feel that and that interior nylon feels sticky, stay away from it. This one's perfect. You're good.
Okay, cool. And I think the very last pair are my trusty clogs that I've had forever. But other than polishing them, we need something to do here, right?
So we look at the edge of this. We can see the thickness here, but again, that heel area where we're contacting the ground has more wear. So this one would be a good idea. We'll shave this down a little bit and put a new section on that heel area. So you have a new wear surface, kind of like put a new tire on a car.
Great. All right, so we're going to leave all of these with you. And then we'll come back and pick them up and show people how incredibly beautiful they're all going to look so that I'll be well put together again. Hi, we're back at the Foot Depot in Encinitas and we're picking up the stuff that we dropped off for repair. So let's see how things turned out. Here's my black boots and they're all polished up beautifully and they now have that cool sole on the bottom. So these are going to wear incredibly well. Check out the clogs. The clogs also look brand new. Look at the bottom part, this heel section. They look fantastic. These, my little boots that I got here, are polished beautifully and also now have that black sole, so they're going to start wearing super well. Great. These polished up really nice. Remember how they were all scuffed? They look so much better. I don't know if you remember, but these little heels were completely off, and now they're nicely. I was working on nails before, so those look great now. And check out my sandals. So these are my trusty sandals I've had for the longest time. And now the bottoms of these are just gonna last forever with these black soles put on them. So these are gonna be, I'll wear these. These are now polished up and honestly look brand new. I've had these shoes for about 4 years. They look like they just came out of the box. Amazing. Here's the belt, my husband's aunt's belt. And this is all now glued down nicely. You can't even see where it was done and how it was falling apart before. It looks great. And so here's my grandma's purse. This is a really old purse and it was reconditioned here and it just looks brand new. The leather shines, it looks great. This is gonna have tons and tons of life in it. I'll give it to my daughter one day. So here's all my goodies. It's like getting brand new stuff. Really is. It's so exciting. Everything looks great. Thank you, Jim, so much for talking to us and for really educating us on leather care. I know I learned a ton. I thought I knew a lot. I really didn't. So really appreciate that. Thank you. If you are ever in the San Diego area, stop by and see Jim at the Foot Depot in Encinitas. Tell him the Dress Up Mom sent you. Please subscribe to this channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, dress it up a little.